So let's meet the man at the center of all this, Calvin Brooks. Here's a guy who'd spent 20 years building up his community. He was dressed for a professional meeting, carrying grant paperwork for a youth mentoring program he ran. By all accounts, this man was a pillar of his neighborhood, just starting his day like any other. And this is where you see two completely different worlds just slam into each other. In Calvin's reality, he's a professional just running a simple errand. But in the story being created in real time by officers Clean and Maddox, who were responding to this really vague, suspicious person call, he was immediately painted as a threat that needed to be, well, neutralized. And just like that, it went from right into the local police department and seized everything: servers, records, and the body cameras they had tried so hard to tamper with. The local system had officially lost all control. All the evidence was now
it was supposed to be just a quiet walk down a normal suburban street. But in just a few moments, it exploded into a confrontation that was designed to ruin a man's life. Okay, so let's dive into this incredible story of how a corrupt system was completely dismantled by the one thing it never, ever saw coming. I mean, this quote right here, it just says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you have this huge, overwhelming force of a local system. And on the other, you've got this quiet, unseen power they just couldn't possibly comprehend. It's a classic David versus Goliath, really, but with a modern twist that shows just how fragile that kind of unchecked authority can be when it's finally confronted with the truth.
So let's meet the man at the center of all this, Calvin Brooks. Here's a guy who'd spent 20 years building up his community. He was dressed for a professional meeting, carrying grant paperwork for a youth mentoring program he ran. By all accounts, this man was a pillar of his neighborhood, just starting his day like any other. And this is where you see two completely different worlds just slam into each other. In Calvin's reality, he's a professional just running a simple errand. But in the story being created in real time by officers Clean and Maddox, who were responding to this really vague, suspicious person call, he was immediately painted as a threat that needed to be, well, neutralized.
And just like that, it went from 0 to 100. The escalation was instant and just totally chaotic. Guns are drawn and the officers are just barking these contradictory orders. Turn around and no, stop. Get on your knees, hands on your head. I mean, as Calvin is just trying to process these impossible commands, they declare he's resisting. They created the justification for their own use of force right there on the spot.
Now, here's the thing you gotta understand. This wasn't just some random, unfortunate mistake. As the whole thing unfolded, it became crystal clear that the officers were following a pretty well-worn playbook, one that's designed to manufacture guilt and protect the system no matter the cost. And this lays out the whole strategy perfectly. First, you create the confrontation out of thin air. Step 2, you immediately label any confusion or, frankly, any human reaction as resistance. Third, you write up an official report that backs up your bogus story. And finally, you use the power of the system to intimidate and isolate your victim, just to make them feel completely powerless.
And here it is in black and white. This quote from the actual police report shows you exactly how fiction becomes official fact. They use words like aggressive resistance and significant force to describe a man who was simply trying to comply with impossible orders. This document, this was their weapon. But here's the thing about a playbook like that. It's got a fatal flaw. It completely relies on controlling the story. And two things were about to absolutely shatter that control: irrefutable proof and a very, very powerful connection that those officers had no idea existed.
So the first crack in their whole story, it comes from right across the street. A neighbor, Joan Pritchard, she didn't just stand there and watch. She actually came out, phone in hand, while her doorbell camera was already silently recording every single second. I mean, this is citizen journalism in its most powerful form, right? Creating an objective record that the official report was specifically designed to erase. And get this, Joan, a retired librarian, was literally the perfect witness. She didn't just have one copy of the video. Oh no, she had backups. She took meticulous notes with timestamps. Her whole life was about archival and preservation, which meant this crucial piece of evidence wasn't just gonna disappear. And this is the moment everything changes. At the station, Calvin was allowed his one phone call. He dials a number for a White House liaison named Ethan Ward. Yeah, the officers were about to find out that their routine little arrest was anything but.
Now, you'd think that phone call would make them back off, right? Nope. Once that call was made, the system didn't back down. It fought back, and it fought back harder and a lot dirtier. Realizing they'd lost control of the narrative, the local authorities just escalated their efforts to intimidate Calvin into silence.
And it is just wild how quickly they moved to crush him. As soon as that federal inquiry started, the local district attorney, Tripp Sloan, he doubles down on the charges. Then Calvin finds a threatening note on his door. And to top it all off, he's suspended from his job without pay. They were trying to break him from every single angle you can imagine. But all that aggression, all that intimidation, it was a huge, huge miscalculation. Their attempts to intimidate a federal witness and destroy evidence were so blatant, they crossed a line. And they triggered the one thing they feared most, a full-scale federal intervention for civil rights violations.
And this is where you can just see the desperation kicking in. Suddenly, key digital files are mysteriously corrupted. They even rearrested Calvin on a completely bogus witness tampering charge, a clear act of retaliation. But these moves backfired, big time. They prompted Calvin's attorney to go straight to the DOJ, which brought in Special Agent Dana Cho to take over the whole thing. And then comes the moment that feels like it's straight out of a movie. Federal agents walk right into the local police department and seize everything: servers, records, and the body cameras they had tried so hard to tamper with. The local system had officially lost all control. All the evidence was now in federal hands. So with the truth finally exposed, the consequences came, and they came fast. The very system that had protected these officials for so long was now forced to hold them accountable. And the fallout was massive. Let's just run through the list. The 2 officers, fired and decertified, meaning they could never be police officers again, anywhere. The police chief resigned in disgrace. The DA, he's facing a formal ethics complaint. And for Calvin Brooks, his case was dismissed permanently, his job was restored, and he got all his back pay. But the story doesn't just stop there, with people getting punished. It ends with actual systemic change. Inspired by what Calvin went through, the community came together and created a legal aid fund with new rules for preserving evidence. This wasn't just about justice for one man. It was about building a framework so the next person targeted wouldn't have to fight all by themselves. And really, when you boil it all down, Calvin himself said it best. His own words perfectly redefined the entire narrative. The system tried so hard to label him a resistor, an aggressor, but the truth was far simpler and so much more powerful. He was a survivor. A story like this really shows that corrupt systems, they thrive on our silence. Calvin's story only came to light because witnesses were there to document the truth. And it leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. What systems in our own communities are operating in the